Do you want to read? Steve, do you want to ask the questions?
Yeah, I'll ask the questions. Yeah.
Okay, good. I can sit mute.
Okay, this is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and today we're going to focus on a development in the International Committee of CUNY, Professional Staff Council, PSC, and we're going to look at the an issue of Conlutas and the history of Conlutas, who it is and what it's doing, and why it is under attack by some members of the International Committee of the PSC union, which is an AFT local. And joining us today is Fabio Bosco, who's one of the leaders of Conlutas. He's a transit worker in Sao Paulo with CSP, and Carol Lang, who's a member of the PSC, a professor at Bronx College, and also member of the United Front Committee for Labor Party. So welcome both of you to the show.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see
Steve.
Okay, well,
Nice
first,
to
why
see
don't we
you,
start
Carol.
about, First, why don't we start about the history of Conlutas, how Conlutas was formed and when it was formed and what its history has been.
Okay. Let me tell you, all the organizations that started Conlutas, they were inside the CUT, which is the main labor federation in Brazil. It's a federation that's led by the Workers' Party, the party that currently is ruling Brazil. And what happened? In 2002, Lula da Silva, he was elected president of Brazil. And he won the elections. And one of the first decisions he took was to carry out the pension reform against the public workers. And so the public workers went on strike, the federal public workers, for 40 days. And the CUT decided to support Lula against the public workers for something very sad. Because you see, for instance, in the Metal Workers Union of São Bernardo do Campo, which is one of the most traditional and militant unions we used to have here in Brazil, they make a campaign against the privileges of the public workers, you see. So the CUT played a role of dividing the working class. And so the public workers unions that were inside the CUT, they said, no, it's not possible to stay in the CUT anymore. And so they split. Together with them, the left wing inside the CUT split. And what they did, they built a kind of national coordination, you see. This is the origin of Conlutas. Conlutas started first as a coordination of different unions with a strong weight among public workers. But we had also other sections of the working class, but the public workers were the main one. And so that's how we started. We started let's say, the struggle against the pension reform that Lula carried out gave birth to Conlutas.
And the struggle against privatization and the policies of Lula, why don't you talk about that? Because I know I visited Brazil and Sao Paulo, and there were strikes going on against privatization of Petrobras, and the workers there were very angry that it was the Workers' Party government, which is actually privatizing the oil industry.
Yes. You see, Steve, we need to understand that Lula da Silva governments, now it's his third term in power, they are capitalist governments. You see, Lula built an alliance with major sectors of the capitalists, and these capitalists are ministers in his government. And the policies that comes from these governments, it's something like this. They are neoliberal policies, but they have some kind of support for the very, very poor. That's more or less the idea, which is something that the World Bank predicts, you see. they call it social compensatory policies. You see, as neoliberal will bring about a lot of people that are unemployed, that cannot survive, so you create programs like food stamps, you see, for people to survive. So Lula government is something like this. So he carries out privatizations, but he try not to use this name. He used another names for the same thing, like partnership between public and private partnerships, some concessions. It's the language is different, but the privatization is the same. And so the working class that is affected by these policies, you see, privatization. What happened with privatization here in Brazil? I myself am a victim of one of these privatizations. Half of the workers are dismissed. You see, the new workers that are hired, they are hired with lower wages, with little labor rights. And so it's very, it crushes the rights of the working class, you see. So the privatizations that Lula carried out, despite of having another name, had the same effect. Look, currently, we have a struggle of the subway workers in Porto Alegre. The company belongs to the national government, but the national government does not want to take it out from the program of privatizations, the national program of privatizations. And the workers will go on strike, you see. They will fight to keep their jobs and their rights. And so, you see, it's the struggle against privatization is a working class issue, you see. It's not something that is business or that belongs to the capitalists. This is something that affects the working class. And so the workers stand up, you see, and Lula is not our ally in this struggle.
And of course, a lot of people, a lot of workers in Brazil supported Lula against Bolsonaro, and you have the rise of fascism. After that, the election, there was anger about the attempted coup. There were mass demonstrations against it. What was the role of the Workers' Party and the Lula government in relationship to Bolsonaro?
Look, the capitalists, they prefer to keep Bolsonaro as a card in their hands, just in case the situation go out of control, you see. At this moment, the capitalists and imperialism, you see, Steve, I mean, the US government and the European imperialist governments, they are supporting Lula because they believe that Lula can prevent some kind of upsurge among the working class. And they are right to some extent, you see, because the majority of the labor unions, they are led by people connected to, that are supportive of Lula's government. But just in case things go out of control, they have the far right organized and prepared to stop the working class in the streets, you see, through direct attacks against the working class. That's why we need to prepare the working class to fight for labor rights, to fight for social rights, but at the same time, we must keep one eye on the far right, you see, and prepare self-defense. What Lula is doing, what happened, this attempt of coup d'etat in January 8th, it was something very problematic for them. You see, let's say the Bolsonaro people, they went out of control. They decided to storm the 3 most important buildings of the bourgeois democracy in Brazil. And they did it in alliance with the police, with the army. So this is very problematic. So at this moment, what the bourgeoisie is doing, they are trying to, let's say, tame the far right. They want the far right to exist, but not to storm the presidential palace, you see? So there is some more than 1,000 people that are being tried for this attempt of coup d'etat, and a handful people that are leaders, you see? Bolsonaro is being interviewed by the federal police, but it's not clear if they are going to put him in jail or not, because he's the one responsible, the main one. So let's see. It's not clear. What I can tell you is that the attempt of coup d'etat was defeated. It was a setback for the far right. The bourgeoisie was angry with this stuff. So maybe they will punish many of the people that were involved in this attempt. And so Lula politics, which is to build a kind of conciliation, of peaceful environment, of bringing all Brazilians together, be people that supports Bolsonaro, be people that are on the left, everyone together to rebuild the country. So maybe he'll have to do some kind of exception to deal with this attempt of coup d'etat.
And maybe you can talk about the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, past president, because she was removed, and the United States, I understand, was involved in helping to remove her, but she denied it at the time, said that the United States had nothing to do with her removal. What were the forces that led to her removal, and what was the role of the United States in that?
Look, Steve, what happened to former President Dilma Rousseff was that the economy was performing, was in very bad condition. So unemployment rose. So every working class family, they have one or two members that have no jobs. Inflation in those days were 10% per year. So you see, 1 year, 10%, another year, plus 10%. And so the purchasing power of the working class was going down. And so it starts dissatisfaction among the working class, a spread one. At the same time, there was an operation carried out by the courts to investigate corruption cases. The main one was in the state-owned oil company called Petrobras. So you turn on the television, you see, you have one member of your family without job. Your purchasing power, you see, going down. And you turn on the television, corruption, 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 corruption. So what happened? Dilma, at those days, she had support that was inferior to 10%. There was a kind of split, you see, a political split between the working class and Dilma Rousseff government. And so what the bourgeoisie did, they noticed that they needed another kind of government to keep their business going on. And so they, through parliament, they get one small error of the government to impeach her. The working class did not react, you see. Despite of the fact that the largest unions in Brazil, the leadership supported her, they could not take action because the working class was not in favor. And so she was replaced. US imperialism, they were okay with that. They were not the ones sponsoring it. You see, it was not something like in Chile, when the US organized a coup d'etat, or in Brazil in 1964, when the US organized a coup d'etat. This one was something like this. Okay, if you want to keep her, we are okay. If you want to take her out, we are okay. They did not play a great role. but they did not oppose. They did not oppose US imperialism. And on our side, we always had an independent, a policy of independence in relation to any capitalist government, you see. So despite of the fact that Dilma was the first woman to be elected president of Brazil, and she was a former guerrilla fighter, and she is left-wing, despite of all of these issues, she was leading a capitalist government. So he did not support the government. And at the same time, the impeachment would bring into power her vice president, who was a right-wing politician, because they built these coalitions, you see. And so we did not support impeachment, because impeachment would, would not bring change for the working class. So we did not support, and we did not support the, and there was no mobilizations against the impeachment, you see, and our statements were of independence in relation to this process. So that's it. And you see, Steve, one thing that I would like to comment, the issues of oppression of women, Black people, LGBT, immigrants, you see, we understand them as issues that belongs to the working class. They are working class issues. But this does not mean that we must support Dilma because she is a woman. The same reasoning we have in relation to the US. When Obama was the president of the United States, okay, he's a Black man, but we don't support the government, you see, because it's a capitalist government. So we don't agree with identity politics, you see. We are not on this page, but we support the rights of the working class women not to be harassed at the workplaces or in the transit system. We support the right of the Black workers not to have smaller wages for the same jobs. We support the right of the LGBT people. We support the working class that are immigrants, you see, many of them refugees, to have the same rights as the Brazilian workers. So we work the issues of oppression under a working class perspective. You see, that's the way we understand it.
Now, Dilma has been appointed head of the Belt and Road Bank, the bank system that China is trying to build with other countries. And the United States is very unhappy that the government, Lula government, is aligning itself with China, with Russia, with South Africa. What exactly is going on with that? And is that benefiting the Brazilian working class?
Well, I will give my opinion, okay? This is a controversial issue here, you see. My opinion is that, okay, let me explain what the majority of the left-wing people understands here in Brazil. They believe that it's very good to have a new kind of imperialism, Chinese imperialism, because it will be some kind of challenge to the US imperialism. So they believe that it's very good if Brazil allies itself with China. That's the understanding of the majority of the left-wing organizations here in Brazil. My political organization is the Unified Socialist Workers' Party. We don't share this understanding, you see. And in CSP-Conlutas, we also don't share this understanding. Because look, Steve, it's something like this. You live in a poor neighborhood, and you have a criminal organization there, one mafia there, you see. Then what the worker want, the working class family? They want to get rid of the mafia. They don't want 2, 3, 4, 5 mafias in your neighborhood. They will fight and you will be the victim, you see. So it's the same. We live in the world. Okay, the US is the main imperialist power. It's not the only one, but it's the main one. At least it's still the main one, okay? But I don't want to have other imperialism, another one and another one. We need to finish this imperialist system. So what happened? Then when Lula do this movement, which is to get closer to China, in reality, Lula does not want to challenge the role of US imperialism, okay? What Lula is doing is for Brazilian business. Today, the majority of Brazilian exports go to China. So he tried to be friendly both to the US and both to China. That's what Lula is trying to do. I don't know if he will be able to do that because the dispute between China and the US is getting stronger, and to have a kind of a neutral position that tries to benefit from this conflict, it's not an easy policy. But for the working class, we don't benefit from that because Lula went to China. Okay, and he came back and said, no, we have new contracts to export more beef and more, I don't know what, and more. Man, what happened? The price of beef goes up in Brazil, you see? So we have 33 million people that do not have enough food. Why will Brazil export more food abroad? So we don't benefit from that. But the capitalists, you see, okay, agribusiness, they benefit. They make a lot of money. But for the working class, no benefit. So that's my understanding. But what I want to warn you once again is that these ideas that I am standing for here, they are a minority among the left-wing people here.
Okay, and Carol, your committee, your international committee, as part of the Professional Staff Congress of your local, some of your members have charged that Conlutas is really just an organization organized to fight, recently formed to fight the Lula government. Is that, what were the accusations made about Conlutas?
Well, actually, I had some. I have some questions myself about Conlutas. So let me ask them. And I sent a list of things to Fabio to take a look at.
Okay, before we go on, we only have till 11 o'clock. So.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
so let me ask. Conlutas is an organization that is sort of a unity of a variety of like unions and so does Conlutas have a program? And a couple of things. What is its program? What is its attitude about agricultural segment of society? And I understand that you supported Lula in his campaign for presidency, and yet you said, that you didn't support Dilma. So could you give us a layout, what you think, what your argument was for supporting Lula and what Conlutas actually wants to strive to do ultimately? Those are my questions.
Let me start with Lula. In the last election, here in Brazil, we have the election in two moments, okay? We have the first vote and then you have a runoff. In the first vote, Conlutas did not support Lula. We supported in general working class candidates, but we did not support Lula because the politics of Lula are capitalist policies, okay? In the runoff, there was Bolsonaro and Lula. Bolsonaro was a problem for us. Why Bolsonaro was a problem? Because Bolsonaro really wants to turn Brazil into, to turn the Brazilian state into a dictatorship against the people and against the working class. So when we have freedom rights, it's easier for the working class to organize and to stand up and to fight back. And that's why in the runoff, Conlutas put out a statement saying vote against Bolsonaro, okay? But at the same time, we make it very clear that we are voting for Lula to defeat Bolsonaro, but we don't agree with anything in Lula's program, you see? Because it's a capitalist program. The second issue that you raised, Conlutas is mainly a labor federation, but when we founded it, our dream was to put together all labor and social movements, you see. So CSP-Conlutas allows movements that fights for housing, for affordable housing, or movements that fight for land reform. We have some of these movements affiliated to the Labor Federation, you see. And we also allow, for instance, we helped to form here in Brazil 3 associations of immigrant workers, one of Haitians, another one of Venezuelans that came to Brazil. There are a lot of refugees here. And the last one recently of workers from Bolivia, you see. So we help to organize them, and if they want to be affiliated to CSP-Conlutas, we are very happy to have them here. So CSP-Conlutas is different from a pure labor federation. It allows other movements, social movements, to join it and to have rights, to vote, to be in the leadership and everything else. About the program of CSP-Conlutas, we believe that it's necessary to overthrow capitalism. We are against capitalism, and we are against imperialism. You see, we see these two as the source of exploitation and suffering for the working class. And so we believe that the struggle against imperialism is a working class issue. You see, Brazil has a subordinate position in this international world order, you see. So the imperialist policies are behind the industrialization, unemployment, you see the high prices of food. So we understand that we must take a stand against imperialism. What else? And we want workers' power. We believe that the solution is to have workers' power in Brazil and build international solidarity with the working class across the world in order to change the world, you see, because Brazil alone will not be able to carry out all the changes that are necessary. And so we have also this internationalist perspective.
What about the land question?
The land question. We support land reform. The main movement that is affiliated to CSP-Conlutas that fights for land reform, they fight for land reform in a different perspective, you see, because the majority of the land reform organizations here in Brazil, there are a bit more than 100. Almost all of them try to fight for land, then you divide it, you see, you split it, and each family has one piece, one plot of land. We believe that in collectivization, you see, so you should take the whole plot of land, and all the working class families are there working together to carry out the production. But if one movement that wants just to split the land want to come to CSP-Conlutas, they are welcome, okay? So, and the issue of land reform in Brazil is a big issue. It's a big issue, and it affects us because the best lands are used to export, you see, to Brazil is a great exporter of coffee, sugar, orange juice, beef, pork, chicken. And so the best lands of Brazil goes to export in the benefit of the agribusiness bourgeoisie. So we want to make a land reform, but we believe that it's better to let's say, to explore the land in larger plots collectively, you see, because not only is more effective for the production, but it also makes political education, you see, a learning for the workers to see that you must work together, and these are seeds for a new society. That's what we believe, but we accept people that do not share this perspective.
I have a couple of other questions. Is there tension between the idea of this being sort of an association of unions with the fact that you have a revolutionary party? And also, how are you and are you doing anything in terms of the favelas?
Okay. Look, in CSP-Conlutas, political parties are not allowed to be affiliated. But if any member of any union or social movement, they are members of political parties, they can come and they can, you see, when you have a Congress, all political organizations, they are selling their materials, they can deliver leaflets to whoever they want, to make meetings with whoever they want. So there is freedom for the political organizations, the left-wing political organizations, of course, to operate, but they are not formally affiliated to the Labor Federation. Okay, and the issue of the favelas, there is a very militant, a very good organization that is affiliated to CSP-Conlutas that fights for the improvement of the people, of the homeless people, you see, because people make favelas because they don't have proper housing. So how the favelas started, you choose one place, either a building that's empty or empty land in the cities, you occupy it and you start the organization of the families come. If it's open air land, you make the first tents, you divide it, you organize it. You see, Carol, if you have the opportunity to come to Brazil, I will take you to see some of these occupations. It's something very beautiful and inspiring, but the bourgeoisie hates it. So we had some years ago a strong defeat that happened in a city nearby Sao Paulo called São José dos Campos, where the labor union, the metal workers union, they helped a big occupation of 8,000 people, you see, and it was working to legalize it. But after maybe 8 years, the governor of Sao Paulo decided to send the police there and expel everyone. It was a big fight and we lost. But we believe that this struggle for housing, for proper housing, is also a working class issue. So we support them and a movement. If they want to affiliate to CSP-Conlutas, they are welcome.
What about, there's tremendous police brutality, especially against Black people. And I'm wondering, are there any sort of workers' defense guards that Conlutas is organizing to protect Blacks against police brutality?
Look, in the poor neighborhoods here in Brazil, the majority of the people are Black people. A bit more than half of the Brazilians are Afro-Brazilians, you see, and they are concentrated in the poorest parts of society. It's not easy to build this self-defense in these large suburbs of the big Brazilian cities, you see. What happens is that when, for instance, these occupations for land, all of them, they build self-defense. All of them, they build it as a kind of protected neighborhood. You see, you make an entrance, you keep people in the entrance 24 hours per day. You have some weapons that are not, I don't know how to say it, revolvers or something like this. You have sticks and things like this in order to fight with someone that's bringing problems. In these occupations, They also fight against machoism, violence. So for instance, there is a guy that beats his wife. The committee goes there to talk to him that they will not accept anymore, and just in case it happens, he will be expelled from it. So in these places that are starting, it's easy, all of them, they have self-defense, but the large neighborhoods, it's much more difficult. What happened in these places much more are protests, you see? So when there are cases, and this happens every day in Brazil, so there are protests, CSP-Conlutas support the protests. If there is an association, they want to join CSP-Conlutas, they are welcome. But this is very underdeveloped. You see, Carol, it's still in a level of this level. You don't have a proper self-defense. You just have groups that fights for the rights of the, or black rights, or the rights of the poor people in that area, that try to expose police brutality.
So let me ask you two more questions. How much support does Conlutas have in the working class? And do you see at any time in the near future sort of a militant mass struggle of workers? I mean, I'm sure it's going to happen, but what's your assessment of what's happening now in terms of the working class challenging Lula and challenging the government?
Look, the majority of the working class here in Brazil, they don't have unions. But let me explain something, because I know that in the US it's the same, but here there is something different, which is if you have not individual contract with a company, it means that necessarily you have a union. Okay, every worker has a union, but 60% of the workers do not have this legal relationship with the boss, you see? So these guys have no unions. So when we talk about the working class that have regular contracts, all of them have unions. Today in Brazil, there are something like 12,000 unions. But the majority of these unions are yellow unions. And let me put it better. The majority almost do not exist as unions. They just collect some money from the workers, but they do nothing. That's the broad majority. Then you have yellow unions that have some active, that are active. Like the CUT unions, they have life, but their politics are reformist politics. So Conlutas today, it's something like 10% of the CUT. You understand? So we don't have this labor that have no regular contracts. Then among the ones that have, part of it are in the active unions. In relation to these active unions, we are 10%. So in relation to the working class in Brazil as a whole, which are more than 100 million people, CSP-Conlutas is a minority. But still so, for instance, I want to invite you, Carol, for you to come to Brazil for you to see. We are going to have a Congress now in September. You see, the Congress, we have 1,500 delegates, you see, that are elected in assemblies, or the union organize it, or caucus, reform caucus inside the unions, or in these occupations of the homeless movement. You need to have mass meetings to elected delegates to come to CSP-Conlutas Congress. So in relation to what we have across the world, it's powerful. But if you look to the needs of the working class to overthrow capitalism, it's still small. You understand? about the future, look, the situation in Brazil is very bad, you see. So it's probable that at certain point there will be larger struggles. At this moment, we started to have some struggles. What's something very interesting? So, for instance, we have the teachers in 2 states that went on strike. We have this struggle in the south of the subway workers against privatization. There is another struggle against privatization by subway workers in Belo Horizonte. So we are starting to have struggles, but they are still isolated. They are not something that are, you see, like a wave. No, we don't have a wave. But let's see, what I can tell you is that the situation of the working class is difficult. So there is a tendency to react. Okay, there is fear of losing jobs. We have all these problems as any other country. But I feel that the struggles for bread and butter issues, they will emerge in the second semester, many of them. Maybe we'll be able to unite then. Let's see.
Okay, and now, Carol, what is going on in the IC? Because these are professors, academics. Why would they come up with the idea that Conlutas was only formed to fight Lula?
I would have to say that by and large, you know, a lot of people don't know the history of either Conlutas or other organizations that they profess to understand or know about. And I can't speak for the person that wrote that email that I had sent to Fabio. And so my purpose of getting us to do this interview is actually to let people know that the reality of Conlutas is, you know, is a real, live, breathing, fighting, revolutionary organization. And so that I'm hoping to get a discussion going after I send this out to them. But there are people who think that they know and they don't know. And
well, if they make up things about history, historical facts, it raises the question about their ability to understand what's going on in the world, because it's easily discovered in the internet where Conlutas came from. They have a web page, when they were formed. It seems that the person who raised that, there has to be a question of where she's getting her information and why she isn't knowledgeable enough to understand the real history of Conlutas, which is easily available.
I mean, I can't speak for her, so I can't answer that question, which is why I wanted to invite Fabio to have this conversation. But I think that a lot of people on the IC are very wrong in a lot of information. And unfortunately, these are people who teach at the city university, and the same person apparently has argued that the UTR, which is a major union in Puerto Rico, is a revolutionary organization, and according to some of our comrades, they're actually sellout organizations. So, you know, I can't speak, but I would like to begin a conversation, which is the reason why, you know, I'm trying to invite Fabio to begin this conversation and hopefully clear up some of the misinformation that people have.
And maybe the committee could invite Fabio to address the International Committee about the work of Conlutas, so they have a clear understanding about what's going on in Brazil. I think that would be useful.
I think it would be a great idea. We're an international committee, and, you know, people, you know, sometimes think they know more than they actually do know. And I'm planning to send this video out and to the IC whenever it's finally finalized. And hopefully we can get a conversation going about, you know, building internationalism. And unfortunately, many of the people on the IC have an attitude that, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they have this, you know, that China is, you know, is socialist, and that, you know, that we support places like Tehran because it's anti the United States. And, you know, we want to have a, you know, multipolar as opposed to fighting for socialism. And I have arguments all the time about this. And so I would like to present them with people who actually have a revolutionary point of view and a class point of view and a Marxist point of view about undermining capitalism, and not arguing that places like, you know, Saudi Arabia and Iran are friends of the working class, because, you know, this is an argument that we have, you know, month after month after month. So my intention, Fabio, is for you to be able to clear up some of the things that are misconceptions that were sent out. And I'm going to send this to them as soon as I get it.
Look, Carol, first, I'm available. Second, thank you very much to bring up these discussions. I think we need to have a really working class perspective, you see. And if we have a working class perspective, we are not confused with these regimes in China or Iran or Saudi Arabia, because all of them are anti-working class, you see. I'm happy that you bring up all these issues, and thank you very much. And thank you, Steve, for holding this interview. I don't know if I was too long to provide the answers, but I'm here with you. Your mic, Steve.
Steve, you're Steve.
I was going to say it is important to get the information out in detail, so you were not too long.
Definitely not.
So we'll get this out. Thanks for joining us, Fabio, on Work Week.
Good luck.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.